मिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकथामहं ददति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलान् श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितां तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नाम्ने नमस्ते सारस्वतीदेवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Reading from Śrīla Prabhupāda-līlāmṛta Volume 1, Chapter 35. This remote corner of the world. Although Śrīla Prabhupada has been away from America for a year, his Krishna consciousness movement has flourished. By Krishna's grace and the devotees' attachment for him had grown. His disciples, having heard reports and seen photos of his triumphant tour of India, had felt inspired to increase their own preaching. In each American center, new devotees had been joining and were learning Prabhupada's teaching from the senior devotees. Although already accepting Srila Prabhupada as their spiritual master, hundreds of newcomers were eagerly awaiting initiation. How different from Prabhupada's first arrival in America alone in 1965. Walking the cold streets with no money and no temple, he had been ignored. Sometimes he had thought of quitting, taking a boat back to India, but he had maintained absolute faith. And now, less than 6 years later, in dozens of ISKCON centers throughout America, hundreds of disciples worshipped him and would throng ecstatically to receive him. Los Angeles, June 26, 1971. When Prabhupada had left Los Angeles a year ago, the political turmoil there had troubled his mind, but on returning he found the devotees recovered. Faithfully they were executing his orders to chant publicly, distribute back-to-God magazine, and worship the deity of Rukmini Dwarakadisha. In the gorgeous, decorated Los Angeles temple, Prabhupada performed a large initiation ceremony, accepting dozens of new disciples. On June 26, Srila Prabhupada traveled from Los Angeles to San Francisco for the 5th annual Rath Yatra. 200 followers met him at the airport. How many devotees do you have? A reporter asked. Unlimited, Prabhupada said. Some admit and some don't admit. Admit you are a servant of Lord Krishna and your life will be a success. After 2 days in San Francisco, Prabhupada returned to Los Angeles and on July 16 flew to Detroit. Bhagavan Das, Prabhupada's governing body secretary for the Midwest, had preached vigorously in his zone, opening centers in St. Louis, Chicago, and other cities. Almost 300 devotees, most of whom had never seen Prabhupada, assembled at the Detroit airport to receive him. Sureshwara. Devotees had come from all over the Midwestern US and Eastern Canada to greet Srila Prabhupada at Detroit's Metro Airport. A red and gold throne stood in the center of the reception room, and the devotees were chanting Hare Krishna and dancing, awaiting Prabhupada's arrival. When the plane finally landed, all bliss broke loose. The disembarkment dolly joined the plane, but we couldn't see Srila Prabhupada. I became anxious. When would he enter the room? Suddenly, a cry went up, and I looked around. Devotees were bowing down. Urukrama. Srila Prabhupada entered the room as bright as the sun, and everyone immediately prostrated themselves on the floor. Not like the other times when we bowed down together, but this was like an overwhelming force hit us and we were being thrown to our knees. When I stood up, I couldn't believe my eyes. There was Prabhupada. Almost everyone in the room was crying. Indradumna. My first glimpse of Prabhupada was through the lens of my camera, and I thought he looked just like he did in his pictures. I had only seen him in pictures, and now he looked just like the pictures, only moving. All the devotees began to cry and fall to the ground. It was transcendental, emotional thing. I was looking, watching all the older devotees how much love they had for Srila Prabhupada, and I was feeling unqualified and sinful. Urukrama. Prabhupada appeared powerful, yet at the same time delicate and soft, like a very wonderful flower. As he moved along very slowly, the devotees lined up and made a easel for him to walk. He walked up to Kirtanananda Maharaj, put a garland around him, and embraced him. Kirtanananda Maharaj was crying tears of ecstasy, and he looked like a little boy next to his father. Then Prabhupada went to Bhagavan and patted him on the head. Then he embraced Bhagavan, who also began to weep like a little boy who has just seen his father after a very long time. Vishwakarma. I arrived late. When I got there, I was afraid to look at Srila Prabhupada because I felt too fallen to look upon the pure representative of the Lord. So I stayed behind a wall of devotees, afraid to look. Finally, I realized this is as ridiculous as the perfection of eyes is to behold the forms of Krishna's pure devotee. I raised my head and I saw him sitting on his Vyasasan, drinking a cup of water. Never had I seen anyone drinking water like that without touching the goblet to their mouth. The water poured from the cup like a shining silver stream straight into Srila Prabhupada's mouth and throat and finished the water in a few swallows. He appeared to be a grand sage from the spiritual realm, and as everyone chanted, he looked around at the devotees, smiling with great pleasure. Everyone was overwhelmed with transcendental joy, and I joined with over half the devotees in weeping. Prabhupada began speaking. This is very satisfactory that so many devotees, boys and girls, are taking part in this great movement, Krishna consciousness movement. It is a very important movement because it is correcting the human civilization. It is a great defect in the modern civilization. People are accepting this body as self, and based on this mistake in the foundation, everything is going wrong. Accepting this body as a self is the beginning of all problems. The great philosophers, scientists, theologians, and thoughtful men do not know what is the effect. Recently, I was in Moscow. I had a nice talk with a professor of Indology, Professor Kotovsky. He was speaking that Swamiji, after this annihilation of this body, everything is finished. So I was astonished that a learned professor posing himself in a very responsible post had no idea about the soul and the body and how they are different, how the soul is migrating from one body to another. As Prabhupada spoke, a voice announced over the public address system that the departure launch had to be cleared for the next flight. They are speaking about ourselves. Prabhupada asked, we shall stop? All right, let us go. That evening in the temple room of Detroit's ISKCON Center, Srila Prabhupada sat on his Vyasasan before the deities of Lord Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balaram. While a devotee led the kirtan, Prabhupada played his kartal, looking around the room at his disciples. He was nodding his head, pleased to see them dancing and chanting. After the kirtan, he lectured. Just see how their characters are being formed, how they are becoming purified, how their faces are becoming brighter. It is practical. So our request is take full advantage of the center. You come here. It is being guided by one of my best disciples, Bhagavan Das. So he and others will help you. Please come regularly to this temple and take advantage of it. After his lecture, Prabhupada asked for questions. Bahul Ashwa raised his hand. Srila Prabhupada, what is the thing that will please you the most? Chant Hare Krishna, Prabhupada replied, and the devotees spontaneously cried out, Jai, Jai. Prabhupada, that is the simplest thing. You are chanting. I am very much pleased. That's all. I came to your country to chant that you would chant also along with me. You are helping me by chanting, so I am pleased. But this tendency is very nice that you want to please me. That is very good. And to please me is not very difficult. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that under my order, every one of you go preach and become spiritual master. And what is that order? The order is whomever you meet, you talk to him about Krishna. Prabhupada emphasized that if one wanted to preach and represent Krishna, then he could not change the message of Krishna but must repeat what Krishna says. I have come here for the first time. Prabhupada continued. But before me, Bhagavan Das, he had organized. And what is his credit? He has presented things as I told him. That's all. This is wonderful. In Los Angeles, also a program is going on very nicely. My disciple in charge there is Karandhara. He is present here. He is simply doing what I instruct, and he is doing very nicely, first class. Everyone who comes, they come, are enchanted by the temple with the activities with the disciples. So this is the way. This is called parampara system. Don't concoct. As Prabhupada was leaving the temple that evening, the mother of one of his disciples approached him. You know, she said, These boys actually worship you. Yes, Prabhupada said, that is our system. I am also worshipping my Guru Maharaj. The devotees around Prabhupada looked at one another and smiled. Although the woman had tried to make it appear extraordinary that Prabhupada's disciples worship him, Prabhupada had taken it casually. One must worship his Guru. It was a Vaishnava standard and nothing to wonder at. Srila Prabhupada had so many centers in the US that to visit each one was not practical. During his year in India, many new centers had opened on the West Coast in Florida, Texas, the Midwest, the East. Prabhupada said he had more establishments than a wealthy businessman and more residences. Were he to stay at each of his houses he couldn't visit them all in a year, and especially to Indian audience he would cite the monthly expenditures for his centers. Though proud of ISKCON's growth, Prabhupada was never proud on his own account. He never considered using ISKCON for his own enjoyment. Whenever he visited a center, his quarters were usually an apartment arranged at the last minute, often fraught with annoyance like noisy neighbors and incompetent cooks. At 75 years, his constant traveling was hardly an arrangement for his health and comfort. Prabhupada never felt complacent over the small success his society enjoyed, nor would he claim the credit for that success. Rather, he said it was due to mercy of his spiritual master and the previous spiritual masters. ISKCON still had but little influence in the world. People considered it a small, exotic religious sect, but by the blessings of the previous acharyas, it was growing. Prabhupada was initiating more and more disciples, and the potential was unlimited. One of the Lord Chaitanya's chief followers, Jiva Goswami, had warned that a spiritual master should not accept many disciples. Many neophyte disciples would bring suffering to the spiritual master. Yet, on Prabhupada's US tour during the summer of 1971, he initiated more disciples than ever before. As Lord Chaitanya's empowered representative, he wanted to increase the number of devotees more and more. He was aware of the risk, but he was also aware of great need, as he had written in the Nectar of Devotion. The one point is that without increasing the number of disciples, there is no propagation of the cult of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, sometimes even at a risk, a sannyasi in the line of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu may accept even a person who is not thoroughly fit to become a disciple. Later on, by the mercy of a such bona fide spiritual master, the disciple is gradually elevated. However, if one increases the number of disciples simply for some prestige or false honor, he will surely fall down in the matter of executing Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada's test of a prospective disciple's readiness for initiation was standard. The candidate must have followed the four rules, and chanted 16 rounds daily for at least 6 months, and have the recommendation of the temple president and local GBC secretary. Prabhupada accepted anyone who fulfilled these conditions, and he expected the disciple to remain sincere and true to the vows of initiation. Despite Prabhupada's growing number of disciples, he intimately touched each of their hearts. Although a few disciples enjoyed extended association with him, most of his hundreds of disciples saw him only from afar. Yet each of them was certain that Prabhupada was his own. Each could say, "My spiritual master." Each could say, "Prabhupada," and feel close to their dearest friend and well wisher, and the one who was saving them from death. They knew that Prabhupada was the direct representative of Krishna and the most empowered Acharya of Lord Chaitanya's message. Those who were sincere knew without doubt that their connection with Prabhupada was transcendental, not to be interrupted or limited by physical or geographical considerations. If they surrendered to Prabhupada's order, Krishna within their hearts would help them advance. If they were sincere, Krishna would help them become better disciples of Srila Prabhupada. The devotee's love for Prabhupada was not a vague sentiment. He was engaging them in Krishna's service, and they were directly experiencing the transcendental results. Only a devotee, however, could understand Srila Prabhupada's personality or the depth of his disciples' attraction for him, or the depth they owed him. No wonder onlookers at the Detroit airport had not understood the apparently delirious devotees in their blissful reception of Srila Prabhupada. New York City, July 1971. After Detroit, Prabhupada visited Boston and then flew to New York, where another large group of devotees had gathered. The New York Daily News covered his airport arrival with photos and an article. Swami, how they love you. Bhavananda, the New York temple president, had decorated the temple room of Brooklyn Center with bright colors. Prabhupada's Vyasasan was a special creation of plate, stripes, and checks in fuchsia, lime, black, white, and red. Prabhupada liked it very much. 200 devotees. Many have been waited for more than a year to be initiated. Converged on the Brooklyn Temple, and Prabhupada held initiation for 5 consecutive days, initiating around 2 dozen disciples each day. One after another, the young men and women would approach Prabhupada on his multicolored Vyasasan to receive their initiation beads and spiritual names. Those receiving the Brahmana initiation went one by one to see Prabhupada in his room and receive the Gayatri Mantra. Madhu Mangalam. I went to Prabhupada's room and offered obeisances. Come here, he said. So I went and sat close to him. He began teaching me the Gayatri Mantra, and I was looking up at him. The sun was right behind his head. He looked like a mountain, like the Himalayas, and I was like a mole, a stone. He was very big, and I am very insignificant. Riktananda. Prabhupada turned to face me, and his eyes seemed like limitless pools of entrancing liquid. I knew he was focused always on Krishna, and his eyes were a reflection of that happiness. He said something to me, and I said, "No, sir." Saying, "Sir," to him seemed natural, and he seemed to be happy that I had said it. Then in a very clear, soft, steady voice, he began to teach me the Gayatri Mantra. Then he took the sacred thread and put it around my neck, across my shoulder, very gracefully and with such precision in his movements. Now, he said, you are a Brahmana. Daivi Shakti. Prabhupada had the Gayatri Mantra written on a small piece of paper, and as he was teaching it to me, he had his eyes closed. I would repeat it word for word after him. When he got to the third line, however, instead of saying Gurudevaya, he said the word from the fifth line. I didn't know whether to follow what he had said or just say what was on the paper. So I said what was on the paper, and then Prabhupada immediately realized what he had done and changed it. But I suddenly realized that the perfect chanting of mantra was not so significant. Prabhupada was fully absorbed in thinking of Krishna, and although there may have been some apparent flaw in his pronunciation, he was perfect regardless. I saw that the real perfection of devotional service was to follow Prabhupada. After I received my Gayatri Mantra, I asked Prabhupada if I could ask him some questions, and he said yes. Srila Prabhupada, I said, I haven't been able to serve you in a rapt attention. What can I do to serve you? I was praying he would give me a special service to do for him personally. Chant Hare Krishna was all he said. Is there anything more? I asked. He said, are you married? I said, yes. So he said, serve your husband. I said, my husband, I don't get along. So he said, be a pujari. There are so many things. His answer seemed to solve all my difficulty. First and foremost was to chant Hare Krishna. And in addition to that, there are so many other services. If I don't do one of them, then go on to the next one. There are so many things. When he said those words, it relieved all my anxiety. In New York, Prabhupada lectured gravely and authoritatively from Srimad Bhagavatam, stressing surrender to Krishna through surrendering to the Krishna conscious movement. Unlike any other Bhagavatam lecturer, Prabhupada was able to offer a movement, a society, and a way of life that were fully Krishna conscious and that gave any interested person practical entrance into the devotional service of Lord. Someone asked how a person who had been very sinful could be relieved of his karma, and Prabhupada replied simply, come and live with us. That's all. Is it very difficult? Our students, they are living with us. You simply come and live with us, and you are free from all karma. Is it difficult? Then do that. We shall give you food, we shall give you shelter, we shall give you nice philosophy. If you want to marry, we shall give you a good wife. What do you want more? So come and live with us. That's all. Prabhupada stressed this same point in his lectures. If a person seeking spiritual fulfillment lived and served with the ISKCON devotees, if a person seeking spiritual fulfillment lived and served with the ISKCON devotees, even material fulfillment would come. These Krishna conscious boys and girls in 60 centers, they are living in best houses. They are eating the best food. They are in the best consciousness. They have got the best hope. Everything best. Their feature of body is best. What material happiness do you want more than this? They have got wife, children, happiness, home, everything full. So material happiness is nothing to a Krishna conscious person. Material happiness will roll at his feet, saying, please take me, please take me. There is no need of asking for it. Simply be steady and ask Krishna, please engage me in your service. Then your satisfaction will automatically come. Don't bother for material happiness. Nanda Kishore asked, what happens to a person out on the street if we just give him one simply wonderful or some prasadam? Simply wonderful means a sweet made from powdered milk, butter, and sugar and offered to Krishna. Prabhupada, then it is wonderful, simply wonderful. The devotees laughed. He has not tasted such wonderful sweet in his life. Therefore, you give him wonderful, and because he is eating that wonderful sweet, one day he will come to your temple and become wonderful. Therefore, it is simply wonderful. So, go on distributing this simply wonderful. Your philosophy is simply wonderful. Your prasadam is simply wonderful. You are simply wonderful. And your Krishna is simply wonderful. The whole process is simply wonderful. Krishna acts wonderfully and it is acting wonderfully. Who can deny? Kirtananda Maharaj. Prabhupada is simply wonderful. While Prabhupada continued in New York, poised to leave for London in a few days, his secretary mentioned that many US centers were still vying for his presence. Prabhupada casually remarked that if any center could arrange a good lecture program and pay this travel expense plus $1,000, then he would go there before leaving for London. Hearing this, the devotees in Gainesville, Florida, determined to meet Prabhupada's transcendental challenge. The temple president, Hridayananda, assigned an uninitiated devotee, David Lieberman, to find a sponsor at University of Florida willing to pay $1,000 for Prabhupada to come and speak. David visited every student organization on campus until he found a donor. Prabhupada agreed to come, even though his secretary informed him that the flight would lay over 2 hours in Atlanta and then continue to Jacksonville, a 1.5 hour car ride from Gainesville. Atlanta, July 29, 1971. The 10 residents of the recently opened Atlanta temple arranged to receive Prabhupada during his layover at Atlanta airport. They prepared a large feast and decorated the Eastern Airlines VIP lounge with fruits, flowers, and garlands. Bill Ogle, although Srila Prabhupada was not big physically, he immediately captured the consciousness of the entire Atlanta airport when he entered. Everyone was watching as he walked, with his head held high, his cane moving gracefully with every step. The airport is one of the busiest in the country, but everyone who saw Prabhupada looked at him in amazement. Airport officials voluntarily began clearing a path for Prabhupada to walk. But what was even more amazing was that he was so submissive to such insignificant disciples as we. Prabhupada entered the VIP lounge with his disciples and about 20 Indian guests. Confronting the portable Vyasasan atop a marble table, Prabhupada declined. The seat seemed unsteady, but the devotees assured him that it was sturdy. So Prabhupada climbed up, sat down, and began leading a kirtan. After speaking for about 15 minutes, Prabhupada concluded his lecture. This is not sentimental chanting, but it is based on the soundest philosophy, Vedic literatures. We have got so many books and you can buy them in our bookstore. Where is the bookstore? There was a long pause. The devotee had remembered fruits, flowers, the chair, the feast, invitations to the Indians, but they have forgotten Prabhupada's book. Prabhupada continued to wait for an answer to his question until finally the senior disciple, Janame Jaya, replied, Prabhupada, we usually have a bookstore. Was all Prabhupada said. Again, a long silence. So, Prabhupada said, looking at the audience, any questions? Prabhupada chatted with the Indians, asking their names and where they were from in India. Most of them were young men and with families and treated him respectfully like a grandfather or a revered Swami. One Indian man, about 35, mentioned that he was getting his PhD in biology. Oh, biology, Prabhupada said. Poor frogs. Everyone in the lounge, except the biologist, burst into laughter. No, no, the biologist protested, embarrassed. Why poor frogs? Because you are killing, Prabhupada said. But it is for the advancement of knowledge, said the biologist. So it is worthwhile, it is for the advancement of knowledge. All right, said Prabhupada. If I ask you now, will you give me your body for advancement of knowledge? Everyone in the room began to laugh. Yes, yes, I would, the man replied. But the more he protested, repeating, yes, I would, the more ridiculous he seemed and the harder everyone laughed. How many species of life are there? Prabhupada asked. 50 million, the biologist replied. Oh, said Prabhupada. You have seen them all? No. How many have you seen? Perhaps 5,000. And you are wrong. Prabhupada said, there are 84 million species of life. We have scientific knowledge from the Vedas. Bill Ogle. After Prabhupada took Prasada, he performed a play for him. The play was The Brahmana and the Cobbler. A play I played Vishnu. It was terrible. I had to be Vishnu and my wife had to be Lakshmi. I was lying down on Lord Lord lying down as Lord Vishnu and my wife massaging my feet. Prabhupada kept looking at me and I thought he must be thinking, who is this rascal playing Vishnu? My feeling was this is not very good. I shouldn't be doing this. I was very much embarrassed to be in front of Prabhupada like that. Jayasena was Narada Muni, and he offered obeisances about 100 times throughout the play. Because Prabhupada was there, Jayasena was constantly offering obeisances to everyone and anything. So, although he was playing Narada Muni, he offered obeisances to the cobbler. But some of the Indians spoke up. They were a little taken aback that Narada Muni, such a great saint, was offering obeisances to a cobbler, who is ordinarily a very low class person. So at this point, Prabhupada interrupted and began to explain. Actually, he said, it is all right that Narada Muni has offered obeisances to the cobbler because the cobbler is a Vaishnava. Any Vaishnava can receive obeisances more than a Brahmana. He continued narrating the play. He told the story and we continued acting. It was ecstatic. As Prabhupada was leaving the launch to board his flight for Jacksonville, a lady in a wheelchair, the mother of one of the devotees in Atlanta, raised herself up and threw herself at Prabhupada's feet. With tears in her eyes, she cried out, I am dying of cancer, save me, save me. Srila Prabhupada bent down and put his hand on her head. That is all right, he said comfortingly. That is all right. As Prabhupada, garlanded with red roses and magnolia, walked down the corridor toward his plane, the devotees thought that Prabhupada appeared majestic like a king. He emanated a golden effulgence and he seemed powerful yet humble. The devotees felt spiritual strength and pledged to follow Prabhupada's teaching. They last glimpsed him walking across the airfield toward the small plane that would take him to Jacksonville. His saffron silk dhoti and kurta uh, blowing in the breeze, he turned to them and waved. Gainesville, July 29, 1971. Srila Prabhupada asked how fast the car was going and how long it would take them to get to Gainesville. 65 miles per hour, the driver said it would take an hour and a half. Prabhupada observed the scenery along the highway: pine forests, marshes, exotic birds, and occasional armadillo foraging near the highway. Lotuses and lilies grew wild in the canals along the roadside, and a bright sunshine warmed the clear air. Gainesville was a side trip for Prabhupada, a special day for preaching. He had left Shyamananda, his secretary in New York, and brought with him only Aravinda, his secretary. He had come for a day to bring the mercy of Lord Chaitanya to yet another city. When the devotees had picked him up at the airport, he had appeared grave, but on catching sight of the devotees, he had smiled wonderfully, and then, turning to Hridayananda, he had asked, which way? He was like a transcendental fighter, asking to be pointed toward the battle. Prabhupada walked along a flower-sprinkled pathway and into the temple and rented a house near the University of Florida campus. In the temple room, he stood a moment studying a crude but sincerely executed painting of Lord Chaitanya and his associates. Hridayananda asked Prabhupada if he would like to rest, and he nodded. While the devotees performed Kirtan, Prabhupada retired to his room, returning later to sit on a large blue velvet Vyasasan in small temple room. In addition to Prabhupada's disciples from Gainesville, Miami, Tallahassee, and New Orleans, many university students and other guests were also present. It is so nice to see so many young boys and girls here, Srila Prabhupada began, in this remote corner of the world so far away from the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada lectured about the saving grace of chanting the holy name of the Lord. One of his disciples, he said, had been present when his mother was dying because he had been telling her about Krishna and her Hare Krishna. She said to her son in her last words, "Where is your Krishna? Is he here now?" And then she died. After her uttering the holy name and thinking of Krishna, Prabhupada said she would go to the spiritual world. After Prabhupada finished his talk, a girl reporter from the university newspaper raised her hand. "I see almost all young people here," she said. "Why is that?" Prabhupada replied with a question. "Why are there so many young people in the university?" The girl reflected a moment. "Well, I guess that's the age for education." "Yes," Prabhupada said. "So this is the age for Krishna consciousness. You cannot teach an old dog new tricks." The engagement for which Prabhupada had come and for which the University of Florida was paying $1,000 and was to be that afternoon on the campus at the Plaza of Americas. When Prabhupada arrived, several hundred students were gathered near the temporary stage, sitting casually on the grass, lounging beneath the fragrant magnolia trees. The sky was overcast and rain threatened. As more students gathered, the crowd grew to 500. Then, just as Prabhupada was about to speak, a little drill began to fall, and Hridayananda came on stage to hold an umbrella over Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, sitting on his Vyasasan, said softly into the microphone, "Someone is smoking," and the students politely extinguished their cigarettes. No sooner did Prabhupada begin his lecture, however, than a dog started yapping. Prabhupada paused. "Who is that dog?" he asked. When the dog persisted, Srila Prabhupada said, "He also wants to talk." Finally, the barking stopped, and so did the rain, but Hridayananda continued to hold the umbrella over Prabhupada's head. While riding in the car back to the temple, Prabhupada asked to hear the tape recording of his lecture. When he heard the dog barking at the beginning of his talk, he laughed. "Prabhupada," Hridayananda said, "your lecture was wonderful. Everyone liked it. The students liked it. The devotees liked it. The professors also liked it. Professors liked it." "All right," Prabhupada said. "Hare Krishna." Srila Prabhupada's day of preaching was not over yet. Next was an evening television interview. The interviewer had done some preparatory reading and he introduced Srila Prabhupada by first describing who Krishna was according to Vedic literature and how Srila Prabhupada was in the disciplic succession from Lord Chaitanya. When the interviewer asked Prabhupada for an introductory statement, Prabhupada explained, "The Krishna consciousness movement is trying to invoke in all people the original consciousness that we are a part and parcel of Krishna." When the interviewer asked Prabhupada, "Who is your spiritual master?" Prabhupada lowered his head humbly and stated the full name of his Guru Maharaj, Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivarakacharya Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada. The interviewer, however, seemed bent on controversy. "In what way, sir, may I ask, did you think and do you think right now that the teaching of love of God that you are preaching is different and perhaps better than the teachings of love of God that were being conducted in this country and have been conducted in the rest of the world for centuries?" Srila Prabhupada, this teaching is the most authorized. That is a fact. We are following in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya. He is accepted by us, according to the authority of Vedic religion, to be personally Krishna himself. For example, you are expert in this establishment. If someone is doing something under your guidance and if you are personally teach him, do like this, that is very authorized. So, when Lord Chaitanya taught God consciousness, God himself was teaching. Prabhupada had answered positively, avoiding the sectarian dispute the interviewer had invited. Yet repeatedly the interviewer tried to involve him in a controversy. He seemed to want Prabhupada to appear arrogant, sectarian, and anti-American. Prabhupada, however, insisted he was not opposed to any other religion and that anyone in the world could chant the name of God as it appeared in his religion. Interviewer: but there must have been an element of dissatisfaction on your part with the way Godhead was being professed in this part of the world before you came. Otherwise, there would have been no sense in your being here. Srila Prabhupada: it is not just this part of the world. Practically every part of the world has very little interest in God. They have more interest in dog. Prabhupada's answers were strong and philosophically strong. The interviewer, trying his professional best, again attempted to find some fault. Interviewer: it seems to me, sir, as interpreted in your writings, that there is very high emphasis placed on the relationship between the individual and God. Srila Prabhupada: yes, that is found everywhere. Interviewer: yes, but you place more emphasis on that relationship than on the relationship between one individual and another. Am I right in that? Srila Prabhupada: we have to establish first of all our lost relationship with God. Then we can understand what is our relationship between one individual and another. If the central point is missing, then there is practically no relation. You are an American and another is an American, and both of you feel American nationality because the center is America. So, unless you understand God, you cannot understand who I am, nor can I understand who you are. Interviewer: I think that in this part of the world, in the Western world, we place a great deal of emphasis on religion in the ways it gets one man to deal with another man, the ethics of religion. Now, in Krishna consciousness movement, Srila Prabhupada, we are not concerned how one man deals with another man. Interviewer: isn't that part of your Krishna consciousness movement? Srila Prabhupada: no, this is not important. Because we know as soon as one knows how to deal with God, he will automatically deal very nicely with others. Interviewer: but let's take the Christian religion for an example. You know the Ten Commandments. There is a heavy emphasis in the Ten Commandments on the relationship between one human being and another. Thou shall not steal. Thou shall not kill. You know, that sort of thing. Srila Prabhupada. But I say that Jesus Christ never said and never meant that thou shall not kill refer to only human beings. Where is that evidence? Jesus Christ never said that thou shall not kill refers only to human beings. Thou shall not kill any animals. Interviewer: any life? Any life. That is religion. Interviewer: it has never been interpreted that way. Srila Prabhupada: you have interpreted it differently, but he said, thou shall not kill. He never said, thou shall not kill amongst human beings. Why do you interpret in that way? Prabhupada had given the TV interviewer the very thing that he was after, controversy. But because it was not desirable controversy, the interviewer promptly dropped it. Instead, he asked Prabhupada how one could recognize a true follower of Krishna consciousness by his behavior. He'd be a perfect gentleman. Prabhupada said, that's all. Therefore, I prohibit my disciple to eat meat. Interviewer: to eat meat? Srila Prabhupada: yes. And therefore, I prohibit illicit sex. Therefore, I prohibit intoxication. They do not even smoke. What to speak of other intoxication? When Prabhupada said that whoever observed these four rules would become a perfect gentleman, the interviewer asked whether there was a place for women in the religion. Prabhupada replied that women and men had the same rights and followed the same principles. The interviewer asked whether Prabhupada was encouraged or discouraged, and Prabhupada said he was encouraged because so many devotees were joining. The interviewer doubted that many were joining, since out of 200 million Americans, only 2 dozen devotees were present in the TV studio. When you sell diamonds, Prabhupada replied, you cannot expect that everyone will purchase. As a final question, the interviewer asked if Prabhupada had any major complaints about American society. Prabhupada: I have no complaints. These boys and girls are very nice. I am rather encouraged that these boys and girls are hankering after something nice. They are frustrated. So now, since they have the best thing, they are coming. The interviewer asked Srila Prabhupada and his followers to chant Hare Krishna, and within half a minute they were off the air. The hot studio lights went out, and the engineers started talking among themselves. The interviewer bid Srila Prabhupada a polite farewell. He had no intention of continuing their talk, but Srila Prabhupada continued preaching. On camera or off camera made no difference to him. He saw the interviewer not merely as a television personality but as someone to receive Krishna's mercy. The two had been sitting very closely for the interview, and Prabhupada now leaned toward the interviewer and said, "Let me ask you one question. If you have some disease and you want to cure this disease, what is the best way to go about it? By asking a friend or by going to a medical doctor and asking how to cure this disease? Would you go to a friend?" The man replied, "Yes." Prabhupada shook his head. "You would go to a friend?" Again the man said yes. The interviewer was not concentrating, so Prabhupada patiently repeated his example. "Try to understand," he said. "If you have some disease, then would you go to a medical doctor or would you go to a friend?" The man could not grasp the point, so Prabhupada answered, "No, you would not go to a friend. You would go to a physician, one who knows the answer. That is a spiritual master." They talked a while longer, and finally Prabhupada and the devotees left. It was almost midnight, and Prabhupada went to his room. When he had first arrived in Gainesville, he had agreed to initiate the five eligible candidates and had even taken their jap beads. But now the day had passed. There had been no initiation. Prabhupada still had five stands of beads. Joseph and Sam, who had come all the way from New Orleans, and David Limberman and his wife Adrienne, and uh, Gainesville boy named Gary, were all in anxiety. They had stayed up, talking amongst themselves, wondering whether Srila Prabhupada would hold an initiation ceremony in the morning before he left. Aravinda told them there would be no time for a ceremony in the morning, but that he would ask Srila Prabhupada when they could have their beads back. He went to Prabhupada's room, leaving the devotees to sit and talk about Srila Prabhupada. When Aravinda returned, he surprised everyone by announcing, "Prabhupada is going to give you your beads now. He is going to give you your initiation in this room." The devotee excitedly hurried to Srila Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada sat on his bed. He wore no shirt, only his dhoti, which he had pushed up high on his thighs and tucked under himself like a loincloth or gamcha. His body was smooth and glowing. The devotees sat on the floor around his bed while he held their beads in his hands and chanted. Prabhupada handed Gary his beads. "So your name now is Dharmadas. This means one who is a strict follower of all dharma religious principles. Dharma." I was actually very nervous and I was practically shaking because I was afraid I would do something wrong in front of Srila Prabhupada. I was so nervous practically I couldn't even hear properly. But I was very happy to have been accepted by Srila Prabhupada. I knew, of course, there was no question of ever leaving the movement now. I never want to leave anyway, but now this was official. Even if I had considered it before, now there was no question of it. Then there was a Joseph from New Orleans. "What is your name?" Prabhupada asked Aravinda. Sorry, what is his name? Prabhupada asked Aravinda. Aravinda read from a sheet, Bhagavata Das. Prabhupada smiled and said, "Oh, Bhagavata Das, very good. There are two things. There is the book Bhagavata, Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, the person Bhagavata. Sorry. There is the book Bhagavata, Srimad Bhagavata and Bhagavad Gita, and the person Bhagavata, who follows perfectly those teachings. He is a living manifestation of book Bhagavat, and you are Bhagavat Das. That means you are the servant of book Bhagavata and the person Bhagavat. I always wanted a name that meant I was a servant of the Guru. So when I heard this, I was very happy. Prabhupada started to hand me my beads, but then he pulled back and asked, "And what are the four relative principles?" So I told him, and he said, "Very good." Then he went to hand me. My beats again. But again he pulled them back. He asked, how many rounds do you chant? I was very proud because I had been chanting 20 rounds a day for about 5 months. So I sat up right straight and said, you are supposed to chant 16 rounds a day, Srila Prabhupada, but I chant 20. Srila Prabhupada just turned away from me and said, that's all right. It was like he was saying, don't get puffed up. Then he turned to me and said, here are your beads. Handing Dave his beads, Prabhupada said, your name is Amarendra. This meant the best of the immortals. He named Adrena, Gayatri Dasi, and Sam Suvrata. When Subrata stood and Prabhupada noticed he was not wearing neck beads, he withheld the chanting beads and said, you have no neck beads? Where are your neck beads? Prabhupada turned to Bhagavad Das. You also have no neck beads. Bhagavad thought that Prabhupada was going to take his chanting beads back, so he hid them against his stomach. Then Prabhupada turned to the senior devotees in the room, criticizing, what is the matter with you? He said sternly. You are leaders and you don't know these things? Don't you know that you must put neck beads in giving initiation? Then senior devotees were frightened by Prabhupada's anger. We are sorry, Prabhupada, someone said. Tomorrow for the fire yajna, they will have neck beads. Yes, Prabhupada said. You cannot do the fire yajna without neck beads. They must have neck beads. Although it was midnight, Prabhupada asked if the devotees had any questions. Bhagavad Das raised his hand. How is it that we are on transcendental platform, but sometimes we are affected by three modes of nature? It is just like you are on a boat, Prabhupada replied. If you are on the boat, then I cannot say you are not on the boat. Is it not? So you are on a transcendental boat. Therefore, you are on the transcendental platform. You cannot say that you are not. But the waves are coming and they are rocking the boat. Prabhupada gestured with his hand like a boat rocking. So the waves of the material nature are coming, he continued, and they are rocking the boat. But when you become an expert boatman, then even in the greatest storm, you can stay steady and steer the boat, and it will not rock. Well, how does one become an expert boatman? Bhagavat asked. You become expert, Prabhupada replied, by becoming enthusiastic, sincere, confident, determined, and patient. Seeing Bhagavat's anxious face, Prabhupada added, and you must be patient. Everything will come in due course. Sitting informally on the bed in his abbreviated dhoti, Prabhupada had answered Bhagavat's question in such a way as to fully satisfy all the devotees. The devotees were already satisfied just to be with Prabhupada, but by his answers to their questions, not only they but all devotees could take encouragement and be satisfied. They would tell the others what he had said, and everyone would cherish these instructions of Srila Prabhupada. Amarendra also had a question. Amarendra was intense and impassioned, and so was his inquiry. Before becoming a devotee, he had been a leader of campus radicals. Now he wanted to bring that same intensity to bear in spreading Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada, Amarendra asked, how can we make them take to this Krishna consciousness? What can we say when we go to preach to people? What can we say that will make them take it? His voice was heavy and forceful, demanding action. You simply ask them to please chant Hare Krishna, Prabhupada replied. Whether they take or not, that is their business. That is between them and Krishna. But you have done your business. You have done your duty for Krishna by simply asking them, please chant Hare Krishna. How do we take our minds away from Maya and bring them to Krishna? Radhavallabha asked. You must drag the mind, Prabhupada said. You must drag the mind back to the sound vibration of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. And again he repeated, you must drag the mind back to the sound vibration. All right, Prabhupada looked around. You are satisfied now? The devotees responded, yes, Srila Prabhupada, thank you very much. Then they all left. It had been the greatest day and night of their lives. They all agreed and they would never forget it. When Prabhupada wrote to Jack Jacksonville airport in a car with a few disciples. The other devotees followed in their van, bringing the Vyasasan from the temple for Prabhupada to use it at the airport. Srila Prabhupada closed his eyes and rested as he rode, and the devotees in the back seat of his car ate the remnants of his prasadam. Hridayananda. It was my idea to bring Prabhupada's Vyasasan to airport. I was thinking, how can my spiritual master sit in the same seats that karmis sit on? It just seemed impossible. How could Prabhupada put his lotus body, how could he sit on the same seats as the karmis? I was very agitated by that. Amarendra had built the Vyasasan and he used to build everything like a tank. The Vyasasan must have weighed several hundred pounds. It took 4 or 5 devotees to carry it. Srila Prabhupada arrived first, and the Vyasasan wasn't there. By the time he got to the boarding gate and the Vyasasan still wasn't there, I was in anxiety because I didn't want him to sit in a regular seat. I thought it would be a great offense on my part. Then, as I looked down the long airport corridor, I saw 6 brahmacharis, half of them without their shoes on, lugging Prabhupada's Vyasasan down the corridor. It was such an absurd scene. Prabhupada just stood there looking in disbelief and disgust, and finally, several sweating, groaning brahmacharis came and dropped the vyasas and down in front of Prabhupada. Prabhupada just looked at it with disdain, walked past it, and sat down in the ordinary seat. While most of the devotees sat at Prabhupada's feet chanting the Guru Ashtaka prayer to the spiritual master, Hridayananda was preaching to the people who were standing and watching the spectacle. He had some of the Srila Prabhupada's books and he was trying to distribute them. Prabhupada gave more attention to this preaching than to the devotees seated at his feet. Having visited half a dozen cities in a little more than a month's time, Srila Prabhupada was planning next to visit London. Clearly, his field had become the entire world, and his traveling was the practical enactment of his conviction that Krishna consciousness should be given to people everywhere. By Prabhupada's wide traveling and bold preaching, the old idea that Bhagavad Gita and Krishna were only for the Hindus had become an anachronism, a prejudice. Barriers of race, religion, nation, sex, class, all were not down, are now down. The Hindu saying that a Swami should not cross the ocean had become a superstition, intended perhaps to protect lesser Swamis, but certainly never to restrict the message of the absolute truth from being spread. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's express desire was that in every town and village of the world his name be heard, and no Vedic injunction could prohibit that. Of course, the Vedic literatures advised a devotee to live in a secluded place and avoid worldly men and women, and they advised a devotee not to disturb the minds of innocent persons or preach to the faithless. According to one Vedic injunction, a devotee should not even see the face of a non-believer. Such rules and regulations, however, intended mainly for the protection and purification of neophyte, were superseded by a stalwart acharya acting on the higher principle of of compassion. And in support of that highest principle, Lord Krishna had promised, my devotee shall never be vanquished. The surrendered preacher, taking up Lord Chaitanya's highest order, would be immunized against contamination despite regular contact with worldly persons. Even at the risk of his own spiritual life, the preacher approached the worldly people and in return Krishna protected him. Prabhupada was merciful to everyone, everywhere. Therefore, he was Jagat Guru, the spiritual master for the entire world. To become Jagat Guru didn't mean to claim that one was better than anyone else or that he was the best Guru in the world. Jagat Guru means like Narada Muni, a preacher of Krishna consciousness, went everywhere, preached everywhere, and had disciples everywhere. And Srila Prabhupada did that. On arriving at one US airport, Srila Prabhupada had mentioned that yogis had formerly traveled in 3 different ways by flying carpets, by pigeons, and by mantra. Then why have you come today on American Airlines? A reporter had challenged. Just to be one with you, Srila Prabhupada had said, smiling. But that Prabhupada had come by jet instead of by some extraordinary mystic power was actually no less miraculous. The miracle was that he was always traveling and that wherever he went, he spoke the message of Krishna consciousness, created faith in the faithless, and transformed low-grade persons of Kali Yuga into pure Vaishnavas. Srila Prabhupada, in addition to his selfless, compassionate traveling, was also offering volumes of transcendental literature. His disciples in 65 centers around the world were gratefully accepting their role of assisting him, assuring him that they were able to preach to people in their areas and that he should feel confident to go on opening new frontiers of Krishna consciousness and presenting more and more transcendental literature. His disciples especially wanted him to have time for translating Srimad Bhagavatam because he had told them that that was his desire. Often he said that if he could simply spend time translating Srimad Bhagavatam, he would stop traveling. He could not stop travel for very long, however, even if he found enough peace and a suitable place for concentrating on Bhagavatam, duty would call. Again, he would have to travel to see new people, to introduce Sankirtana in a new place, and to ensure that his movement was progressing smoothly. Prabhupada therefore had developed a routine of translating Srimad Bhagavatam anywhere he went for at least a few hours a day. He had a briefcase with Sanskrit Bhagavatams and commentaries and a suitcase with a dictating machine. Wherever he was, he would rise in the middle of night and sit at his desk with his dictating machine and Sanskrit and Bengali volumes and take up where he had left off, translating the verses into English and composing his Bhaktivedanta purports. Thus, his busy traveling and his translating were able to go on simultaneously. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, it was very nice. Though it was a bit quick, but
Yes. So Prabhuji, devotees brought the chair, the Vyasasana, but he did not sit now on that chair.
yeah.
He sat on. So was it a good idea or to bring the, I mean, the Vyasasana for the spiritual master?
Yeah,
But
because Prabhupada did it, should be a good idea.
okay. But instead he did not sit. Huh? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, of course, only Prabhupada can say, or maybe who was present, they can say, if Prabhupada said. Sometimes, yeah, it might appear like, okay, the desire of Bhagavad Prabhu was very strong that he can facilitate whatever his thoughts were perfect. Hmm? But somehow, the situation in the public where maybe people who are around Prabhupada would have seen what is this whole drama going on. And after that, if he sits on that, it looks like, okay, he is arranging for himself. Huh? Of course, now we are reading. Just imagine if the same thing is happening without reading, we may understand it something else now. Okay, maybe Guru is demanding for himself and yeah, to show off that he is a totally different species. So yeah, Prabhupada felt, oh, what is this all going on? It's kind of, I'm not getting the right word, but fanatic. Not to give people a feeling like, okay, yeah, then people will start envying such a position, such a person. Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else have a question or share their realizations, connections with what you had in your past, with what happened here?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I think I love the interaction that he had with the interviewer. He was politically very correct. This guy tried to intimidate him by asking about Christianity, Jesus, and the Ten Commandments, etc. But the way he kind of navigated things, not to hurt anybody's sentiments, but still putting across the message was very beautiful. Because in high tension, sometimes, right, you tend to lose your cool and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. This all comes, yeah, when you see people from their where they come, hmm, just by not giving up or not just getting caught itself, there it is their failure. The more and more they get failed, the more and more they get disturbed. And finally, there was this question, right? If you get disease, will you go to a friend? Will you go to a doctor?
Totally collapsed. Yeah, he could not even understand.
That
Yeah.
already showed that he already lost it, but he was
Um,
just trying to pull on, because
correct.
he might have read somewhere about Prabhupada and he has created some own feelings. I somehow feel maybe this guy was actually a Christian also,
Mhm. Very
where
true.
yeah,
Yeah.
where he was kind of feeling, what is this all of a sudden? Some envy. All this is because of feeling envious of their own position. Huh? What
Absolutely.
is that something great you are going to do? Hmm?
Yeah. It's like just imagining Arnab Goswami getting knocked down in his own forte, right? So he would be speechless. So yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you, Guruji. Hare Krishna.
yeah. Right.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Dinathan.
Yes, Prabhuji. I think in this session, I think I remember this when Prabhupada said, while preaching, ultimately, we all should preach that everybody should chant Hare Krishna, but finally leave it to Krishna. It's between them and Krishna ultimately.
Yeah,
So this thing, yeah,
yeah.
Prabhuji.
I think when we were discussing in Linda also, we used to talk about in the same lines.
Yes, Prabhuji. Mm. So yes, Prabhuji. I mean, this is something. Yeah, when Prabhupada said, yeah,
Yeah,
something I can remember. I mean, I will never forget.
yeah. And also, it's so important that the purpose. There is also a point, right? Prabhupada liked Hridayananda Maharaj, who was preaching when
Mm.
others are sitting. So Prabhupada counts more on the active service than who is next.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yes, Prabhuji. Mm.
because in the end, score counts, right? Just
Yes,
imagine,
Prabhuji.
if there is a cricket match, and
Mm.
it's not the person who is just ducking the balls is not so much remembered than the person who is actually scoring and getting closer to the win.
Mm.
So
Yes, Prabhuji.
it's
Mm.
not the screen presence. it's it's not who is on who is in the between the stems. What do you call stems or
Stumps.
stumps? Right. See, I even forgot cricket terminologies. So it's not so who is in between these stumps, but actually the one who has really done something there.
Yes, Prabhuji. Correct. Yes, Prabhuji.
And also this is very vigorous to see how this fire is increasing, right? The 65 centers. Huh?
Mm.
By the second visit already there are 65 centers means, yeah, and there is no compromise on standards, or like, okay, if Prabhupada is allowing some lenience, that's the reason so many people are joining. No, Prabhupada kept on saying, okay, even if there were 2 dozen people, compared to the so many, still he valued and he compared that, okay, these are like, you won't get diamonds, right? Not everyone can buy
Mm.
diamonds. This is
Yes,
also very
Prabhuji.
important. If we focus on people who we are in contact, if we can somehow um, fan the spark in them to also become, yeah, they will preach. Yeah, they will become devotees and they will preach. Today I was talking to Deepali Mataji. She's also there. Hare Krishna. So I was saying like, okay, I'm very much happy the way Deepali Mataji, she is conducting programs, home programs, inviting people, newcomers, and then actively chasing them. uh, and it means a lot. Yeah, she's saying that, okay, it's all because of you, but actually I didn't do much. Yeah, the whole groundwork is done by her, calling them, attending, and following up, cooking for them, arranging everything. So that is what others see and get inspired. And when she's saying, I am also ready to support you in your own houses if you want to do programs. That is also again, wow. If someone is hesitant how to do, they see, I don't need to be hesitant. So these kind of things can take far. It can reach very far into the heart of the people who are just trying to begin, kind of neophyte devotees, or even at least want to or join. They'll see, okay, there is someone who is there. Yeah. So after, I mean, I see that our only thing is only preaching. There is nothing else. All remaining thing, either we are talking, dancing, singing, eating, all these things are only ourselves socializing. But actually, in every of this, we do what? We only push with preaching.
Yeah, yes, Prabhuji. I think everyone, I mean, in our group, they're extremely
Yeah,
dedicated for
extraordinary.
the service.
Extremely
Extraordinary and
extraordinary.
extremely dedicated for the service of Krishna and Vaishnavas, Prabhuji. So
Yeah,
it's like mutual inspiration all the time.
yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
I would like to share one more thing. Because our group strength, we felt so relaxed. If you are doing program at home, no tension that. But we want to invite everyone because of you all. No, they give us strength to me to doing it, for doing it, nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one way of gaining strength. I would simply collapse if I have to cook so much. For so many, attending so many from morning. I think not even morning to make pickles. It will not happen one day. So everything, yeah. So very, very, very genuine mood of serving. Yeah, this is what makes programs extraordinary. Yeah. Anyway, Satish Prabhu was there. Ajarasa Prabhu are there who attended. They can say how was the program.
Yes,
Just
very,
now,
very nice program, Mataji, and very tasty prashadam.
Absolutely, Mataji.
just now I was talking with Samruddhi Sanika. This time Satish Prabhu come for the program first time, and he was started serving. It was a great help. Arun Prabhuji was not feeling good, but still he was trying to serve. So it was so great help for me. Yeah, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for the service opportunity, Mataji. Yeah.
That is the main thing. Everyone is looking service opportunity. Yeah. Everyone is becoming Tivra Bhaktas and Bhaktis. Varsak Jai Mataji.
We were unable to attend the program, but we were completely glued to Zoom.
Yeah. Acha, you were seeing the Zoom also?
Yeah, it was actually little hot in the end, right, Prabhuji?
Yeah, very
And
nice.
how was the prashadam, Prabhuji? On
Hot.
Zoom?
Oh, Prashadam, there
For
was
them,
no
the
Zoom.
prashadam is
It was
only
transcendental, right?
Q&A. Yeah.
I mean, under the hands of Deepali Mataji. Yeah, all the Matajis. Yeah, but we were watching it in Zoom.